Welcome to the October version of the Greater Fort Walton Beach Chamber of Commerce Business Forum. Pleased to have you all joining us today, and I have three distinguished guests with me, and I'll let them introduce themselves as we go clockwise around the table.
Good day to you, everyone. I'm Ted Corcoran, President and CEO of Greater Fort Walton Beach Chamber of Commerce, and I want to share with you that this is the casually dressed side, and this is the professional sport coat dress side.
Good morning. I'm John Hofstad, and I'm the County Administrator for Okaloosa County.
Good morning. I'm Matt Turpin, the 2019 Chair, the current incoming Chair of Greater Fort Walton Beach Chamber, along with being the local CFO for the Bank of England Mortgage.
Nice way to get that marketing plug in, Matt.
Absolutely. Using the Chamber to the fullest.
That's what we do. All right, well, gentlemen, we're here to help bring up some fun facts and figures of the upcoming vote for the half-penny sales tax on the November ballot. And I think our best source of information should come from John. John, maybe we could start off with a little bit of background about some of the major areas that the funding would be used for, and maybe your perspective of our shortfall on current funding.
Yeah, sure, Nick. This process started some time ago, years ago actually, and as you know, when the economy collapsed in 2007, 2008, local governments across the country were forced to make just a series of cuts to meet the drop in revenue, and we cut out over 100 positions. We cut out certain services. We tried to maintain a high level of service, but one of the areas that suffered the most was our capital program. And we've got aging facilities, we've got aging infrastructure. The economy's rebounded over the last few years, and we're starting to see some consistent growth in property values. 4% last year and the year before. We're looking at a little over 6% growth in property values this year. But that revenue source, the ad valorem taxes, property taxes, that only accounts for about $65 million of the county's overall budget. And the county's budget this year is in excess of $380 million. So a lot of that money is derived from enterprise funds. Enterprise funds are run like business entities, so the charges for the services that come in fund that particular function of government. So on the general fund side, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of about $95 million that has to fund just a full gamut of operations here in the county. A good portion of that, 40 million plus of that, goes to fund the sheriff's office. So we fund, Board of County Commissioners funds some of the constitutional offices, fully funds the sheriff's office. So when all of that's said and done, you've got a few dollars left to feed the rest of the need here in this county and fund major capital improvement. It's been a problem for some time now. We have been fortunate that we have a very low debt burden here in Okaloosa County. We have very little accumulated debt, and for that reason we were able to fund a courthouse in the south end of the county some, 8-9 years ago now, and having to fund the new courthouse construction in Crestview. But we still have, again, aging facilities, aging infrastructure, and how do you pay for that? You know, how do you fund that? We don't want to fund that, at least from my perspective and the board's perspective. We don't want to place that burden entirely on the backs of property owners here in Okaloosa County. Right. So those of us that own the properties here in Okaloosa County and pay those property taxes, is it fair that we shoulder all of the burden to upgrade that infrastructure, whether it's roadways, stormwater infrastructure, police, law enforcement, emergency services? There are hundreds of thousands of people that visit our county each summer, as we well know, and we look at a more equitable source of funding to fund that need, or the people that use that particular resource and infrastructure, and that's the transients and tourists that come through our county each year. And so we looked at it from multiple perspectives, and what we finally resolved to do was to look at a local option surtax, a local option sales tax, where a portion of that burden is borne by those that visit our area, the tourists, the transits that utilize and come through our county will share a big portion of that burden. Ted and I had a discussion about this, gosh, probably two and a half years ago, Ted, and trying to strategize on the best path forward to get to that point. So this has been brought to the board on a number of occasions over the last year and a half. The board has endorsed the concept. They see it as the fair way to truly address what is continuing to be a growing concern here in this county, and the growing transportation need. You know, I've talked to several groups, and I mentioned to the groups that I spoke to. I've been in this county near about my entire life. My parents were here and worked here, and I've been here since I was 2 years old. And I will tell you, the same roads that I traveled on in my parents north to south through this county in the 60s and 70s are the same roads we have today. And
just in worse shape.
And this county is not a county of 75,000 people anymore. It's 200,000 and growing, and we've got to, now's the time to address those needs.
Well, thank you for that. And I think you hit on the three major areas that the funding would be used for, but I'd like to elaborate a little bit on that. And one of the things to point out to our audience is the fact that the revenues generated by the sales tax can only be used for capital improvements. They cannot go to funding additional personnel or anything else. It is purely capital improvements. And all the money raised will stay here in Okaloosa County. Matt, from an accounting background, I'm sure you can appreciate the impacts that would have on our local businesses. And I think everybody here should understand, if we don't have to raise the millage rate for our property taxes to generate this $18 million a year, then those homeowners are really getting a big break. And furthermore, as John mentioned earlier, you're offloading part of that burden to the people that don't live here or that don't own property, that have been basically getting along without paying a fair share. This way it's a more even distribution to everybody that's using the services, the roads, the storm water, you know, everything that's impacted by this. So
Absolutely, and we've had studies done. The lion's share of our sales tax is collected between April and October. That's 56% of our sales tax that is collected during that time. It's no surprise that that is our heavy season for traffic and people that come from out of town. So again, it takes the burden off of the property owners to fund our capital improvement projects, not operating expenses that you said, but our capital improvement projects.
that's right. And Ted, maybe you can share some facts that we've gleaned in some of our research over the past year.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason the Chamber's involved in this is because the county commissioner's role is to just offer it to the local voters. Are you willing to reinvest in our county? And we're so happy that John and his staff and the county commissioner said, yes, let's give our voters the opportunity of doing just that. And it was interesting because as we interviewed people at the Chamber, you had two perspectives. You would say Okaloosa County is the lowest taxed county in the state of Florida, or you'd say Okaloosa County is the lowest taxed county in the state of Florida, comma, and it shows. And that's the part that we took on. That's where the board of directors of the Fort Walton Beach Chamber of Commerce said, we would like to take the lead on the promotion of this campaign. The county commissioner's role, put it on the referendum for November 6th, and the role of Matt and Nick as the leaders of the chamber, as well as all the board, is to inform the public on all the reasons why it's necessary to vote yes on November 6th.
John, I know you have a wealth of statistics on where we rank and what counties are lower versus per capita ratios. Could you share some of that in our few minutes here in the segment?
Yeah, you know, Nick, we take great pride in this county in maintaining a low tax burden for our citizens. I do, you know, personally as the county administrator, and you know our board does, and past boards have as well. There are, at last count, there were 3 counties in the state of Florida that had an aggregate millage rate below 4 mills. And we were one of those counties. Now, we had a slight millage adjustment last year. We're still one of the 3 lowest aggregate millages in the state of Florida, with an aggregate millage at 3.9, which is below 4. The interesting thing, when you look at overall tax burden, we've calculated our tax burden for our citizens here in Okaloosa County, and the average tax burden for a citizen in this county is under $300. It's about $275 per citizen. We have no franchise fees in Okaloosa County. We have no local option sales tax here in Okaloosa County. The two counties that we typically compete with for that lowest aggregate millage, Walton being one and Monroe County, which is the Florida Keys, being the other, their tax burden per citizen is in excess of $1,000. About $1,200 in one case and a little less than $1,100 in another case. The counties are smaller. Property values are much higher. They're generating more revenue for that particular tax millage per citizen. They're generating more revenue than what we generate here in Okaloosa County. So, you know, and those counties also have, in both cases, they have a local option sales tax, and I believe they have franchise fees in Monroe County as well. And so that adds to that total tax burden. So that's what I look at, is what is the tax burden for our citizens here in Okaloosa County, and at $277 per citizen. That is significantly lower than the counties that we typically benchmark ourselves against as far as the millage rate is concerned.
And Ted or Matt, I think we've compiled some statistics on what the average typical homeowner spends in, or not necessarily homeowner, resident spends in Okaloosa County, and what the impact of a half-penny sales tax would be. Do either of you gentlemen remember the exact number?
Not the exact number, but even after the half cent, we would still be the lowest. So even after the increase, we would still be one of the lower.
Yeah, and I think it's relevant to indicate that John and the county commissioners have done a great job of having a wonderful existence in Okaloosa County. But now we're looking at filling in those gaps where we have not been able to take care of in public safety and in water quality, and certainly in roads and congestion. And I gather we'll talk about that after the break.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you. And we're going to take a brief break here and come right back. This has been our distinguished group here for the business forum of the Fort Walton Beach Chamber, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Nick Chubb, 2018 Chairman of the Board of the Fort Walton Beach Chamber, and this is the second segment of our business forum. And during the break, we were just chatting amongst ourselves, and Matt brought up a very good point. And I'd like, Matt, why don't you expand on it and make sure that our viewers understand?
Sure. So the funds from this half-penny sales tax would go to capital improvement projects. Capital improvement projects would be brick and mortar, things you can touch, things you can and see, not to payroll, not to overhead expenses. These will be items that we will see pretty quick impact once the sales tax would be passed. One of the items is going to be the public safety enhancements. One of the biggest issues that we hear in talking with Sheriff Ashley is county-wide communication, whether it be between the Sheriff's Office, between EMS, 911, being able to communicate across the entire county. We need capital improvement structures to be able, for our first responders, those that put their life on the line every day, to be able to communicate, not just in large-scale situations, but in everyday type situations. So part of the funds are going to go to capital improvement projects, whether it's increased communication systems or other vehicles that will go to facilitate the emergency response in everyday situations.
Yeah, and to elaborate a little bit on that, when I interviewed Sheriff Ashley a month or so ago, he'd brought up the fact that, you know, it's not just the communications between the departments and EMS and everything else not being able to be complete across the county footprint that impacts the safety for our first responders, but it also impacts response time and response capabilities for our residents, and that's just absolutely critical that that gets improved.
Absolutely.
And if I could, I think one of the enhanced surveys at Okaloosa County is public safety, one of the highest quality of life expectations in Okaloosa County. So we've got to help everyone out and make that happen.
Right. John, the other major bucket we're going to address today is infrastructure. Would you like to tackle that?
Yeah, I mean, one of our pressing needs, and we've talked about this with groups that we've spoken to, and we've talked about it earlier in this segment, was transportation and congestion. I mean, that continues to be a problem in this county along the 98 corridor. I mean, we have congestion, specifically during those summer months when people are visiting our area and visiting our beaches. But we also have significant congestion in and around the Crestview area. You have essentially one north-south corridor in this county, and that's Highway 85 linking the Fort Walton Beach area with Crestview, and then we have Highway 4 and Highway 85 north out of the county, north of Crestview. What we've been seeing, and this has been over the last probably 8 or 10 years, is continued congestion coming in and out of Crestview. So congestion in the morning and then significant congestion in the evening is people that work in the south end of the county but live in the Crestview and North County area are transversing back and forth. We're seeing congestion to the point that even out of the peak tourist season, and what we would refer to as the shoulder season and that the winter months of the year, we're still seeing traffic backed up, and at sometimes typically late afternoon, traffic's backed up past the Duke Field interchange there. So it is a concern. It's a concern from an evacuation standpoint. What we've looked at is an alternate corridor around Crestview, and that's the corridor we refer to as the Southwest Bypass, which is utilizing P.J. Adams and Antioch. Taking that road from a 2-lane connector to a 4-lane roadway and increasing the capacity is a $200 million project. It would require an additional interstate overpass. What this funding source does for us is it gives us the dollars to leverage against state and federal dollars to accelerate a project. Because I would tell you, absent a suitable funding source to match against state and federal dollars, you're talking about a 20 to 25 year fix for that particular alignment. We have the opportunity here to accelerate that project and get it done within 5 years. But it would take a funding source, significant funding source, similar to this half-cent sales tax, to be able to leverage against Triumph dollars, if you will. We've got an application into Triumph Gulf Coast to accelerate that project, but they require that we leverage local dollars to do that. So our plan is to spend as much as 20 to 25 million of this revenue source against those dollars and state and federal highway dollars to get that project completed. And I will tell you, in this line of work, in transportation planning and transportation infrastructure, major transportation capacity improvements just do not happen in 5 years. And we have an opportunity to do that. Along with some work that we're planning in the Destin area, Destin Commons or Commons Drive, some intersection improvements to help the flow of traffic in the Destin area and help relieve some of that congestion for the locals. Those type of projects along the 98 corridor. Now that's a DOT roadway, but we can leverage local dollars to help DOT get a project completed. And that's our aim. That's our goal, is to take this funding source and make wise use of it to complete projects that all of our residents can see tangible results from.
And I think a lot of our viewers probably are not aware, unless they're involved in municipal politics or at least even attend council or commission meetings, of the shift in things and the focus on skin in the game to get grants. Everybody has their hand out because everybody, every municipality, every government agency, and you can extend that on, is coming up short against their operating budgets. And the only way to make the ends meet is by coming up with matching funds to get the larger grants or get the larger in-kind contributions. So it's absolutely critical that we have the resources to allow you and the county commissioners to put forth a good proposal to get those matching funds. so that we can not lose out on money that would effectively be free for our county.
Right.
I agree. If I could jump in on that, Nick, because you talk about the cities there, not only is this going to the county, a portion of it is going to the cities.
Correct.
And each of the 9 municipalities, as well as the Board of County Commissioners in Okaloosa County, have voted in favor of this. Probably the first time that they've agreed upon anything like this in a very, very long time. So every single municipality. And therefore, not only does the county get money, but the monies, a third of the money that is collected on an annual basis is divided through the municipalities based on population. So Crestview gets about $1.5 million, Niceville, Destin, Fort Walton Beach about $1 million, and it's all based on population. And I'll share with you, because I know right now at the bottom of the screen, RJ Murdoch from EmeraldCoastTV.com here, who's videotaping this, and thank you, RJ, is going to put the name of the website. And that is right there at the bottom of the screen. And for all the information, because there's so much information, some of the lists of the projects, some of the lists of the projects that the cities will be providing will be available at that website.
Well, and some of the other things that we'll be adding to that website will be clips of these interviews that have been conducted over the past couple months. There'll be copies of the sample ballot so that our viewers can go to it and use it as a reference even before they get their copy in the mail. A lot of quotes from different people, listing of contributors. There's going to be a wealth of information coming out to be added to the website.
Right.
So we really hope that that'll be a good resource for you. And John, if I remember, the county will be putting a link up on your website so that ultimately, once this tax passes and the voters approve it, you will be able to put up projects so that, as Matt mentioned earlier, we will be able to see the progress, and pretty much like the road signs along the highway, your tax dollars at work. This will be your tax dollars at work in Okaloosa County.
Right. Our citizens want to know where these dollars are going to be spent. I think another important concept that we've factored into this that the board is endorsed is that of a citizens advisory committee. So we're going to have members of the community that are not elected officials that are going to sit on this panel, and these projects are going to be vetted through that advisory committee. So we make sure that it's not just coming from staff's perspective, it's not just coming from the Board of County Commissioners and their elected districts. It's a citizens committee that's putting their eyes on each of these projects and telling the Board of County Commissioners, yes, this is good for Okaloosa County.
Very good point, because that should just add a little more level of comfort and trust in our voters when they go to place their vote in November. So remember, it's vote yes for the half-penny sales tax. Matt?
I was going to say, it's not just a blank check that any one group will have to spend as they wish. Honestly, the two things that turned my opposition into being for this wholeheartedly is the fact that right now there's a 10-year sunset, and secondly is that it is going to be for capital improvements that has an oversight committee to ensure that these projects that are the desires of the leadership of this county, that the money goes to those projects.
Good point. Ted, we've got about a minute left. Any further
Well, I agree
words
with you, Nick.
of wisdom?
It's just vote yes on November 6th. This project will transform Okaloosa County in the next 10 years. We're talking about an influx of over $500 million of new funds that all of our elected officials get to reinvest and totally transform Okaloosa County, whether it's our county commissioners, whether it's our folks from Cinco Bayou, every municipality out there will benefit. You have to vote yes. Have to vote yes, and be prepared to see how much more wonderful our county will be.
Yeah, it's been said, and I've said it repeatedly, and I put it in a couple of the Coastline articles that I've written. We might have one of the lowest aggregate sales tax or aggregate taxes in the state, but our roads, our infrastructure, it shows it, and that's not something to be proud of. And I think even if you have read some of the newspaper articles in the daily news, you will have recently seen some tourists quoted as to whether it's the traffic situation, whether it's condition of the roads or the water, it's going to start impacting our influx of tourists, and we're going to see not the influx but the outflow. So we need to invest in the future of Okaloosa County, and it's up to you to help make that happen. gentlemen, I thank you for joining us today. I think it's been very informative. John, thank you. Matt and Ted. And from the 2018 chair of the board, thank you all for joining us, and stay tuned for next month's edition.